Instagram, what's up? How would you like to do a live talking about hacking your brain? Well, that's one of the things I like to talk about, so might as well bring a guest in. I'm going to bring in Dr. Patrick Porter, who's using really cool tech that involves light and sound and some other stuff to change your brain. So stand by with me while I bring him in. Invited him in. Hey, Brandon, what's up? I see dude who is Natalie. Hey, what's up? Hey, Patrick, how are you, my friend?
Doing great, Dave. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to pick your brain today and share some knowledge with Instagram about different ways of hacking the brain. I've talked about this in pretty much all my books. It's been a major part of my own personal path. But you've come up with some cool stuff, and I've just committed this year to talking about the stuff that I use and just being real open with cool tech. So, Dr. Porter, tell me your background a little bit. How'd you get into all this brain hacking stuff, and what do you do?
Well, I like to tell people I was blessed to be the son of an alcoholic, so that's how we started our biohacking career. My dad was a silva instructor. He got help for his alcoholism by learning the silva method, and he was one of the first instructors for Jose. We ran the whole the circuit in Michigan, and he did that actually with the nun and the priest from our Catholic church, and that helped our family. So by doing that, what happened was it helped me as a kid, and I started using it to biohack my brain for sports. And then I went to school for electronics, and because I was helping my dad with the seminar business, it kind of rolled into, I got a degree in psychology, but really my electronics. And so I wanted to, and for those that know silva, they had something called the silva sound, which we now know as isochronic tones, but they had this noise they played in the background of the seminar that would put everybody into alpha. And so I've really been in enhanced meditation since I was a kid, and my dad teaching us that.
So what we're talking about there, if you're new to this, like, what the heck did you just say? Well, you can play certain structured sound waves that set your brain up to, whether you kind of want to or not, it'll put the brain into a certain state. And this stuff has been around since its earliest days for 30, 40 years. And way back, I'm just thinking back, this had to be the late 90s, I had software, it was actually software for video game audio designers. And I would make my own tones that would do this because I was really into this brain hacking stuff. But there is a rich tradition of people who are doing way more than hacking some basic sound waves. And Dr. Patrick Porter here has been doing it for that period of time, but with EEGs and measuring results and really pushing the limits of what you can do with sound and light to make the brain do what you want to do. And so that's decoding what isochronic sounds are, which you may or may not know what that is. That's okay, you don't have to. But what you want to know is, holy crap, sound. We're not talking about music or drumming, although those are cool. But something different. What's different about what you're doing versus the most primal way, Tibetan bells and drumming and whatever else? Walk me through the differences.
Yeah, so that's where we learned it. Like to tell people we take ancient traditions, take modern technology, because it's all just recycled. I mean, what's happening in physics, there's something called entrainment. If we go near the ocean, we're going to be entrained to the frequency of the ocean, which happens to be 10 hertz. So how can we mimic that? Well, we can use ocean waves, and our brain starts to associate that because of the rhythm and cadence of that. And our brain is always, actually every cell of your body is always in training to its environment. Whether that's light, sound, or vibration.
It's a definition and temperature, everything. And it's the definition of biohacking. Change the environment around you so you have control of your biology because it's listening. And you're just saying, well, what if we change the lights over your eyes and the sound, even the lights over your ears, to very specific computer design things in order to create changes? But what kind of changes are possible? What are we talking about here?
Well, the major ones, like we just did a study with the NCAA women's hockey team because they were the nationals, and they were, of course, in COVID, they were put in a hotel room instead of traveling home. So we did a study for sleep with them. So what we found was when you're in a high anxiety state, which we call the reactionary mind, it's hard to turn that off and go to sleep, especially if you haven't been trained, they haven't watched your podcast, and they don't know about like the glasses you're wearing. They're exposed to that. So brain, how can we train their brain to turn off? So we have sessions that actually train the brain to go into deep delta. And what happens there is when you get that deep state of delta, what every biohacker is really looking for there is to detox the brain during sleep. If you get that, if you get that 1 hour of deep sleep, what they call level 4 sleep, you're going to detox the brain. But also learning. We got into this because of learning. My first book was actually Awaken the Genius. It's all about accelerated learning techniques.
Yep.
And we can hack the brain. There's something called the Mozart effect, which is you play this classical Baroque music in the background. You probably read about it in the 70s and 80s. And then what we did is we took that same cadence and rhythm and we put it to structured sound. So the brain then, even though you can't hear it, the brain is taking in 25,000 pieces of information, but we're only acting on 40 of them. But that doesn't mean we're not getting a physiological response. So
Yeah.
we can train an autistic child who has no alpha to get more alpha. We can train an adult that doesn't have enough theta to go to sleep. We can train them to have enough theta. It's just whatever brainwave that they want. We have specific sessions for those, or we have cognitive change technology, which means you want to stop smoking, weight loss, all those kind of things.
So those are some big claims. And I want you guys to understand here, there are a whole bunch of technologies that modify your brain state. And very few people know about them. You see a few functional medicine people. If you look through the comment thread here, there's a few people like, oh, my functional neurologist use them. Like I use them at my doctor's office, et cetera, et cetera. You can use them at home. And here's a question here from Heart Soul CW. What about people who can't shut down? By the way, you can stop using weasel words. You can shut down. You just don't know how. But the physiologic response isn't happening. Well, okay, what would you say to someone like that? Can you use these things to tell the brain to shut down whether you want to or not?
Yes, because this is something that's happening outside of your awareness. 95% of your biology is controlled by your subconscious. So you can think your way through, but it's better if you just get into the environment. So the whole thing is about how do you switch off the brain. I tell people the brain is kind of like a gear shift. When it's working right, it's like an automatic transmission. When it isn't, it's like using a clutch, but you're in San Francisco going up and down the hills. And so if they're stuck in that state, the first thing is they got to get out of that state. And we can do that through light, sound, and vibration, because what we know is we did a study with 1,000 people, and after 3 sessions, 1,000 of them went there. And we use like the Wavi, or we use a NeuroInfinity or the New Brain. These are all EEG devices, and it always blows people away because they think just because they're consciously aware, their brain's not moving through these different states, but it's always doing that.
You have no idea what your brain's doing until you've seen the brainwaves. So guys, 40 Years of Zen is my neuroscience company, and we have actually developed our own EEG equipment. And I have unquestionably been able to see, even on the first EEG machine I had 25 years ago, where I get my own brain waves at home. It was called something like the Executive Junior or something. You know the one I'm talking about, right? Anyway, you do light and sound technologies, you will see the brain change, and it is not something you're controlling. And you can be like, okay, I'm going to learn like meditation from the masters in Tibet. So you're like, okay. And you learn how to put yourself in a state, and then you look at your brain and it's like, oh, that was interesting. Or you do something external and the brain changes to that state without you doing anything. Now that could be dangerous. In fact, I think we call that Facebook or, we call that advertising, right? But when you are actually pulsing lights in a certain way, you can dial up a certain state in the brain, and then you know how it feels to be there. And then you can learn to get there yourself. So it's sort of like the first time you ride a bike, your parents are behind there holding the seat, so you feel what it's like to have your feet on both pedals. You can use brain tap and like the light and sound technology to realize, okay, hey body, this is what the chilled out state that lets you go to sleep actually feels like. And body's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And then it does it. So a lot of this biohacking is unconscious, but that's why I wanted to have Patrick on, because like it's in there, and what you want is the fastest path to be able to reach the state, so you can learn to get to the state with or without the tech. You just find the tech usually makes it more effective.
And, once your brain knows it, like you said, I tell people you can go to Hawaii and see the waterfalls, or I can tell you about them. It's much better if you go to Hawaii and see the waterfalls. That's kind of what BrainTap does. It takes you to those states. We use a different technology, even like the Muse, to show people. We had a person on stage at our Quantum University event, and it has little birds, right? You hear the little birds when you're doing it. And most people who meditate find it very easy. It's a very simple process, but she only got 2 birds in a 10-minute session. So I took her out, had her do the alpha training, because we have trainings just for brainwaves. I said, do the alpha. I said, this is what they're trying to get you to, because she didn't know what to do. She said, I'm supposed to hear birds. What's going on? She went back there, got 42 birds in 10 minutes. The guy goes, how did she do that? I go, all she needed to do was get into that state and then remember that state, just like what you're saying. So that's one way. If somebody out there has that kind of device, they're not very expensive, $200 or something.
Check out the comment from Quick Pull Up here. It's like, I find I'm able to relax easier even without the brain tap after consistent use. And that's the reason you do all these brain exercise things. I don't mean like lumosity, although that's cool too. I mean like actually exercising the brain with the sound. Where it's like, what does that sound? What does that sound? And pretty soon the brain's like doing a dance that you didn't know how to make it do. And then it's looking at the lights. And there's a reason that if you go to Tony Robbins events, the lights are doing that. There's a reason you go to a rave, the lights are doing that. When I'm at Burning Man, there's a reason I'm twitching around that may or may not have to do with lights. But all of those are brain modifying technologies, right? So what if you just lined them up perfectly, but instead of in a big stage or an environment like that, you did it when you're sitting at home? And what Quick Pull Up here is saying is that when I did it for a while, I just like, oh, I can get to the state. So it's training wheels. And why would you meditate the hard way for 20 years? Use the training wheels to get there faster. So I believe light and sound are fundamental technology. So is vibration, so is electricity, so is pulse EMF, so is food. You know, those light and darkness and circadian rhythms, blah, blah, blah. All of those are things that just make it easier. And you can choose to suffer and struggle, or you can just like, I'm taking a shortcut and it's okay. And this is a valid shortcut.
Yeah, it also, we find like with our professional sports teams that are using it, like soccer, NFL, and NHL, they set up rooms for this after their training. So it's a recovery thing. If you feel like, you know, because most professionals, they push themselves to the limit. You know, they want that extra second, or they want that other, whatever that cognitive skill is, but they know that maybe they're doing the compression boots. They can put the brain tape on at the same time. And a lot of biohackers, I mean, they're showing pictures of doing all sorts of crazy things that I've never seen. You know, like Tim's always posting like he's in a fighter jet with his oxygen going. So it's something you can do while you're doing other things too. So you can stack those hacks.
You can sit in an infrared sauna. I just did an interview with Connie from Sunlighten, and we talked about all the different things, the different frequencies of that work. There's no reason you can't sit there and use a brain tap while you're doing that. Or you can do it hyperbaric, or you know, anything. Heck, you can sit in an ice bath if you're really a stud about that. But any tech that you can use while doing something else, to me, is an added benefit. Because you know, I have Upgrade Labs. We're franchising. I have $1 million worth of biohacking gear downstairs. I have brain tap as well. I could spend 12 hours a day biohacking myself, and then I'd have no life, because like, oh look, I'm so optimal, I can't do anything. And so it's like, how do you stack them up so you get the most at the least amount of time, and how do you get the most benefits in the least period of time? And that's been the hard part of creating Upgrade Labs. It's been the hard part of even guiding people on Instagram, like, hey, you should pay attention to this. But if you're doing any physical intervention, even a hot bath, as long as you don't sink under the water, you're going to be fine if you use brain tap with it. And new listeners are saying, what is that stuff? It is a headset that has like things that go over your eyes and your ears, and an app that goes on your phone. So it's a combination of things. And here we go. Nora, Optometric Rehabilitation Association, they're using brain tap, which is pretty cool. So brain tap has got some high-end users.
Yeah, we have 2,300 clinics around the U.S. using it, and a good number of them are ophthalmologists.
Wow, you said 2,300?
Yes.
That's legit. So why ophthalmologists? That's surprising to me. I didn't realize that.
The eyes, 30% of your hearing comes in through your eyes. So when people say, why do you use lights in the eyes when we're doing it? Usually when people meditate, we've recorded it, they're actually stressing their brain out, or they're turning off their frontal lobe, and that's not what they want to do. You know, when people are meditating, they're not sleeping, you know, but a lot of people do that. So what we showed is when we introduced the light while they're meditating, this frontal lobe stays active, and now executive reasoning. So now you can problem solve better, you can visualize better, and you retain it. And the way I like to tell people, David, you've probably been to a lecture before. You couldn't hear the lecture, but then you adjusted your line of sight so you could see them. Then you could. That's because our primitive brain, because we're taking in all this information, but it's basically writing off almost all of it, because most of it's noise, right? And it didn't know that speaker was. But if you and I were sitting at a restaurant up in Vancouver or whatever, and somebody said Upgrade Labs, or they said, I'm going to have a Bulletproof coffee in the morning, our ears would perk up, because that's in our reticular activator, right? So it would make our brain wake up. Well, that's kind of what we're doing with the light. We're giving because you know about Tony Robbins and that, you know about neuroconditioning. So we're talking about, we're laying down a track, just like you were talking earlier about the Mozart effect. When you play music in the background and you get the brain to synchronize, we're just using different methods to do that. And every time it's different. That's why when somebody says, why do you have 1,000 sessions? We have 1,300 of them. The brain needs a novel experience, and it needs to change for the brain. The brain has to be challenged. It can't do the same thing every time. And so what we do is we mix that up, and that gives the brain, we want to teach the brain to handle stress and recover. And that's what we're like. We have an Alzheimer's program right now that we're doing. We did a preliminary study. We showed 49% greater neuroplasticity in just 6 weeks. And so these are things that, and they said that this couldn't happen because they went from being dementia patients to being low. They were onset. So the brain.
There are doctors practicing now who, when they were in medical school, were taught that the brain is not plastic and cannot change. And they still believe that shit. And we've known for 25 plus years that it's changeable. And I've talked about BDNF in all of my books, brain-derived nootropic factor. We know how to turn it on. If you look at fasting, that turns it on. Exercise turns it on. There's a coffee berry extract I have in a Bulletproof supplement called Neuromaster that's been around forever. Lion's mane mushroom, the life cycle Australian stuff, not the powder. All of those raise BDNF. So does light and sound. So does meditation. But the deal is called slope of the curve. And this is a new concept in biohacking from Fast This Way. It's a theory I've worked on for a long time. The faster you can put the brain into a state, or the body, that's why you lift heavy even once a week instead of flopping pink weights around all the time. Because the body's like, oh man, I better get ready to go into that state really fast. And that's what drives biological change, including neuroplasticity. So you got Patrick here doing studies on Alzheimer's, which is supposed to be incurable and reversible. And I'm like, hey, what if you stack that with a little bit of microdose nicotine, which works, and some coffee, which kind of works, and some drugs that kind of work, and not having aluminum and mold toxins and all this other crap, and the right stimulation, and maybe hyperbaric oxygen. You can turn Alzheimer's around. It's just doable right now. And there's studies showing it, and you have doctors sit there go, it's incurable. And it's like, do they have Alzheimer's? I don't get it.
Well, there's a lot of people that get convinced in their methodology, and they're not going to change it. The professor that's still doing the mimeograph machine, we don't have those anymore. We have tablets, but there are people that say,
mimeographs. I remember that. Little purple photocopies from like third grade for me.
Yeah. I mean, we have people, luckily we work with the neurological doctors that are cutting edge. Most of them are biohackers, because they themselves want to improve their function, and they want to improve the function of their patients and clients. And, one of the things we know is that this field is always changing, but there's certain principles that are always the same. And, people knew that the brain changed, but science didn't prove it until now. We have the technology that proves it. And, the neuroplastic change, they still don't know how many neurons we have because, but they're guessing it based on an energy, process. But I think that as we get more energy into the brain, people are going to find that the real, also they're not feeding their brain right? They're not getting the right oils. They're not doing all sorts of things. So when you improve those things as well, which is a whole protocol, brain tap becomes a piece of it. So in most of our doctors, it's not just brain tap. So it's one of the things, it's one of the tools that people use. And, a lot of people use chemicals to adjust their physiology, and we're just training people to use the electrical system. So if you can use the sympathetic or parasympathetic system, you're going to have a lot more energy at the end of the day.
That is 100% accurate neurologically. There's a question from Casey Allen or Kay Callen. I have no idea which one. I'm going to go with Casey. And it's one that I actually asked you when I was first getting to know about brain tap. I don't like blue lights at night. There's lots of reasons not to. In fact, True Dark makes glasses that specifically are cutting out way more than blue. Blue blockers during the day are not enough. Blue blockers at night blue blockers during the day are too much. Blue blockers at light are not enough. So I actually put my True Darks on underneath them so that I'm blocking the blue because I don't want to get it. But you had some interesting comments about short exposure on blue. What's your take on using them before bed, even though there is blue that might suppress melatonin?
Well, we just did a study in Australia, and we had a 90% improvement of deep delta sleep with shift workers, and they all listened to the brain tap before they went to sleep. But we recommend that most people, there's 25% of the people that can't use blue light at all after 6 o'clock. It's just going to blow them out of the water. My wife can't do it.
I get no deep sleep if I do that.
Right.
Whether it's from brain tap or from an LED light, I dim everything, or I wear the glasses religiously, I get 2 hours of deep sleep. If I don't wear the glasses or I get blue lights, I get a half hour. Like it's very programmable, but blue blockers don't help. It has to be more than blue. There's 4 colors that matter. Blue is one of them.
Yeah. So we've been playing with some caps since talking to you the last time.
Good.
This is going to show you that go over them that are blue blocker ones. I think we might even talk to you about it. And, so most of our people choose to either listen in the morning, in the afternoon, Some listen at night, but a lot of them just listen to the sound at night, because then they don't like the big headset when they're falling asleep and they go to sleep and they can't wake up. But blue light, there's a lot of reasons why Lou Tai at MIT, we met up with her because they did the studies with the rats with the blue light and breaking down amyloid plaque. And that's because of the frequency of light. 470 nanometer light at 40 hertz frequency actually shatters amyloid plaque in the brain. So we showed that with BrainTap, we could get 23% more gamma in one 20-minute session, where they were showing they got 6% more gamma sitting in a room with blue light flashing for 20 minutes.
Well, but no, I know, Lou Tai. Like we sat on a couch once at a party where it was I have to tell you the story because you guys are going to laugh. You'll laugh too. This was done by the Salk Institute in San Diego, and it was at some event, and it was a pajama party. Like, we're going to be different. And it's all VCs and people there. So VCs, all of them show up wearing unicorn, onesies, right? Because pajamas and unicorns are billion-dollar companies, right? And like, haha. So I asked my assistant to send me pajamas. She sends me red satin Hugh Hefner pajamas. Okay. But now we've got a scientist. She's at Harvard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Harvard? Where?
MIT.
Thank you. I knew it wasn't Harvard.
Across the road.
Yeah, across the street. They always throw eggs at each other. So anyway, so there's an MIT PhD. So she doesn't wear pajamas. She's sitting there probably with white lab coat, as I remember. And so I'm sitting there in red satin pajamas, and all we did was talk about brain hacking for this whole party. All these VCs got drunk and dressed like unicorns. But she was telling me any color light flashing does it. She says, it's the 40 hertz. It doesn't have to be blue. She's like, we could have white panels. We could have yellow panels. It doesn't matter. Just on, off 40 times a second completely fixes these Alzheimer's plaques, and was just like really excited about it. So I don't think it has to be blue. Like, even with the caps you're talking about, I think you'll get results if you can do 40.
Yeah, we do. We have a whole series on gamma now because we're doing an experiment in Texas with PTSD and recovery from trauma with our vets, and they're using a psilocybin, but we're showing that we get the same brain effect as a psilocybin with our gamma programs. So,
now, hold on a second here. Same brain effect in terms of you're not tripping balls like you do on psilocybin. I mean, I've seen some interesting visuals from BrainTap, but they're not like mushroom visuals, or so I've heard.
I've already taken mushrooms before. I've never taken mushrooms, so I've got to do that someplace where it's safe, and then I'll know if it's really happening, because I don't know. They go, what happens when you do it? I go, I always go there anyway, so I don't know what. I mean, but the doctors down in Dallas are saying they're getting phenomenal results, because a lot of people that are addictive, they don't want to do the mushrooms, but they do have a lot of healing effects, right? They can get some results and blow out that old programming and get them more relaxed. And that's one of the ways people break that state, like the question we had earlier. You need something to break that state. Sometimes it could be neurological, it could be something else. Just doing something could do it.
Check out JTDT here. It says, I've noticed using BrainTap once impacts my sleep for the week. That's pretty hefty. Is that normal? Do you see that from other users?
Yeah, well, we know that in our clinics, as long as they use it once a week, there's going to be an effect that carries over. But the nervous system actually resets every 72 hours for most people. He must have a very, good nervous system, because usually, like, if somebody's dysregulated, one session isn't going to last a week. I wish I could make that claim. That would be great. But that's not typical. Every other day to keep the effect.
Now, Martini Farms says eat the mushrooms, and I got to ask this. What happens if you do eat the mushrooms and use BrainTap? I know you would never recommend that because that would be illegal, but if someone were to do that, what would you predict would happen?
Yeah, I think it'd be a great experience. I've known people that have told me stories about it. I've also
Quick pull-up says it's amazing.
Yeah, and so there's a person who lives in Sedona that has done it many times and told us about it, and also did LSD and had a wonderful experience. So I think you'd have a wonderful experience anyway. So I don't know if the light really does that much, but maybe when you're coming back.
It helps. I mean, anyone who's done psychedelics, there's a reason that Burning Man looks the way it does. Like blinky lights in your brain and inserts patterns and stuff. Yeah, at least so I've heard,
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is we're just accessing the world's greatest pharmacy, right? We're triggering
it's all in there.
Neurotropics, and if we can get into those different brain frequencies, we get the experience, and we're hardwired to want those experiences. They actually did a study with wild horses. They put fermented apples in the field, and one horse would actually guard the fermented apples while the others ran around drunk, and then they would switch off. So even animals, just inherently, when they find some way to get a buzz, they'll do it. And so we're just looking for that natural high. you know, and that at least in my case, I was looking for a natural high, not done with any external sources.
All right. Well, here's a great question. I have a partial answer, and I'm going to ask you for your thoughts as well. And it's either from Lila Lasagna. I'm pretty sure that's it. So Lila, impact of fast this way style fasting on brain tap impact. When there are certain states like samadhi that typically you're in a fasted state in order to get into them. You don't have to be in a fasted state for samadhi, but it's generally easier because some portion of your energy is going into breaking down food when there's food in your stomach. And that's not going into your brain, into electrical flow. And when you are in a fasted state for generally more than about 24 hours, something that's a little bit esoteric happens, but it's something all spiritual traditions understand. And these mitochondria that I talk about, by the way, you have more mitochondria studied in your eyes than melanopsin sensors. There's lots of them. I've seen them at the Salk Institute, like with PhD students, like looking at rat mitochondria. It's really cool. And mitochondria, they're environmental sensors. They're your frontline sensors before even your nervous system sees anything, because they're the ones in the nervous system that receive it and send it to the nervous system. So you want to hack something, you hack those guys. Now, when there's no food in the body, they know it. And they're like, oh, maybe we should turn up our sensitivity to environmentals. And they do that so that when you go walking in the forest, and try this fasted and you'll see the difference, you'll be able to see whatever you could eat. Like you'll pick up the plants that are healthy to eat, the very small percentage of plants that won't kill you when you touch them. And you'll see the game. And when you go to a tracker school, they actually teach you this altered perception state that doesn't require drugs, where you kind of have a GPS of where the game is located. And good hunters know what I'm talking about. So fasting turns that on. And if you do that, and then you put on the brain tap, you're already more open. And you also have more energy flowing because you have ketones and because you're not using energy to digest food. So of course you're going to have a deeper experience, right? And you can tune that stuff. And I've played around with this for the last 5 or so years at 40 Years of Zen. Should people eat? Should they not eat? I feed people because I'm putting their brains through so much work there, but I feed them very specifically so that they have the kind of energy to reach altered states. But could you do this fasted? Yes. If you did it on the 3rd or 4th day of a longer fast, like I did in the cave for Fast This Way, it'll blow your mind. I mean, it's a very different experience to do a brain tap in that kind of I'm a little floaty because I'm kind of hungry, but I'm not that hungry. I'd recommend trying that if you're on a longer fast. Do you agree?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Okay. We did a whole series with Mindy Pels is on our program. We have a whole series with her if people are fasting and they want to stay on their fast. I mean, because a lot of people knock off their fast because they don't have the mental fortitude to continue on with it because they let their brain get in the way of what their body needs. Of course, we did that before you wrote your book. We probably could have used some of that material.
Yeah, that would have made sense, right?
Yeah. So,
people are asking if I'm going to say this. Yeah, I'll say this. I'll post it on my Instagram channel. So if you're not already following me, definitely do it and follow Dr. Porter as well. There's a lot of neat science around how you can hack the brain. I'm very interested in this stuff. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for sharing some knowledge, and guys, thanks for tuning in and asking a bunch of cool questions. I really enjoy being able to share these things that most people haven't heard about, but that are real. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention. Appreciate you following me. And if you like this stuff, well, definitely check out Brain Tap. It's affordable and you can really hack your brain that way. And if you want to go deep with me, the Upgrade Collective, go to ourupgradecollective.com. It's a membership and mentorship site where I'm spending a year teaching all my books and lectures with regular calls with coaches, everything. Ourupgradecollective.com and braintaptech.com, or just braintap.com.
Just braintap.com is fine.
Braintap.com. All right, good deal. And you can follow him right here and go to the link in the bio as well. All right, thanks, guys. Have an awesome day.
All right. Thank you, David. Let's see you soon.
All right, thanks, Patrick.